Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for August the 13th in the year of our Lord 2025. This is our one of two, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country, and to do so on your radio in the traditions of our founding fathers. Yes, indeed, they incredibly put the checks and balances in the United States Constitution, the supreme law of our land. We want to demand we obey it. One of the great ways we disobey it is we violate honest money. It's a tragedy. We'll be talking about that today as the broadcast unfolds. But first, a quick summary. We reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. Otherwise, we're for a peaceful restoration of the greatest country on the face of the earth. Check out long-form radio shows at libertyroundtable.com, short-form videos there as well. I'm doing a lot of videos these days. Check those out. As well as we're syndicated by the Loving Liberty Radio Network. Check out incredible talk radio around the clock, lovingliberty.net. Yesterday, or last show, we had on Sheriff Richard Mack with me, cspoa.org, a partnership between citizens and their sheriffs. We talked about the Farmer's Almanac, and this is where we're going to get our first guest, hopefully, in to talk about this. The Farmer's Almanac predicting a long, cold, and snowy winter. That's for the 2025-26 season. They're calling it an old-fashioned winter. Very interesting. This day in history, yesterday, by the way, was the 1994 big, massive baseball strike, which pretty much, for the most part, ruined baseball. The diehard fans are still in and everything else, but, man, they took a hit back then, big time. The players took a hit. The owners took a hit. Really, the people that took a hit the most are the fans. And the game, the strike, significantly damaged the sport's reputation and its fan base, with a drop in both game attendance and TV ratings. Folks, don't make those mistakes again. I mean, Congress can shut down the government and everybody cheers, but when you shut down entertainment like that for greed, now the players wanted more money, they got more money big time, and now it's so expensive to go to the game that the fans are suffering. I mean, you got to pay for parking, you got to pay for your expensive tickets, you get absolutely raped when you go to the concession stands. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what's happening. You say, Sam, why do you spend so much time on that right now? Because this inflation's out of control. Because no one really realizes day to day that everything is out of control. I mean, $1 used to be equal to an ounce of silver. That was honest money. Now an ounce of silver costs $40, ladies and gentlemen, approximately. Depends on if you want a government-issued silver eagle, silver dollar, or whether you just want a round. A round might be a little bit cheaper, but there you go. Lance, I don't know if you heard. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Sam, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. I'm talking about yesterday was the day in history that the baseball strike happened in 1994. And it destroyed the game, destroyed it for fans. Now it's a rich business to where the fans can't even afford to go to a game because of the inflation and the out-of-control fake money, sir. All right, we'll work on Lance. I don't know what's up with that. We need to get Lance on a phone line, Liz, and get that solved ASAP. Moving right along, though, our guest today, Bill Armour. He's a military intelligence vet, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start there. Welcome to the broadcast, Bill.
Hey, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Tell me about being a military intelligence vet. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the great highlights of my life was being able to serve our country. Got to meet a lot of cool people, do a lot of cool things, and more importantly, helped paint my understanding of the world at large and where America finds itself in the middle of that.
Tell me about it. How did you start? How did you get into it? Let's give me a little bit of a summary.
Yeah, so I enlisted in about 2014. I did about 8 years in the reserves there. So I went through, obviously, Fort Huachuca is where military intelligence is headquartered. Spent a lot of time there. Fort Knox, I've been all over the place. The gold, I don't know if it's there. I've been to Fort Knox many times. I think the gold has long since left, but that's a story for another time.
Oh, hold on a minute. Donald Trump didn't hire you and get a headlamp on and let you roll in there and check out the tungsten?
Not me, but tungsten is probably a pretty good guess.
I don't understand why Trump said we were going to go in and look at it, and now nothing's happened. It's been absolutely crickets on that thing, hasn't it?
It has been. I would probably contend that that making that happen with a lot of people behind the scenes, there's probably a lot of people that don't want that to come to light and are fighting him tooth and nail. So while it's been crickets on that, I would think that it's probably behind the scenes been one of the bigger internal wars that we've been fighting here over the last year or so.
All we got to do is those who don't want to go into Fort Knox, just fire them. That's all you got to do. Hey, you don't want to go into Fort Knox, you're gone, buddy. You're in the unemployment line. Welcome, right? Now, let me ask you this, Bill. Is now that you've been in there for, 8 years or so, you got out about, 2022?
You got it.
All right. Is military intelligence a contradiction in terms?
I think the military intelligence as a branch, they do incredible work. They're sharp, really on top of it. Military as a whole, when we talk about the sort of the bureaucracy side of it, that's where you really run into trouble. So fine people doing the work, but bureaucracy ruins anything. It's why we like to keep government small.
Amen to that. Now let me ask you this: when you were there, did you find that there's tons of deep state people there with conflicting agendas, or really
Absolutely.
for the most part, is it good people doing good things?
No. It's very much a mixed bag. In fact, I think intelligence as a whole probably skews a lot more that way than potentially the other branches. And I had a lot of friends that went other sides of the military. But I would say as a whole, you definitely get some people that would be contrary to maybe America first.
Do you think Donald Trump can get a handle on this? One of the things that swamped him his first go-around was the deep state. He kind of thought he had a handle on it, and boy, howdy. I think every one of us from the outside thinks we know how bad it is, but when we get there, we're like, holy crap, we had no idea. In all fairness to Trump, I think that occurred. Do you think this time he's getting a handle on it, or do you think it's still just deep state swamping him? Because it seems like it's some of both, right?
Yes, I was about to say exactly. It's some of both. I mean, you see things like the BLS, which I lovingly call the BS, commissioner there that was just fired recently for the fake jobs reports. But, we've been getting this kind of thing forever. It's across the board. There's so many positions that need to be fired.
Well, I want to know why we have to have a government jobs report in the first place. Why do we got to have one of those?
Yeah. It helps paint investors' pictures, lets them know, where things are going, what's going on.
It's not even constitutional. There's no responsibility for that whatsoever.
We don't know. That's not owed anywhere. It's just for insight here. But I would agree. At least if the information is good, we can work with it, which I think, EJ that he's bringing on is fabulous, has done some fabulous economic work in some of the things that he's been writing over the last couple of years. So I'm very much in favor of that pick. But, we can get productive people out there. Don't get me wrong. I'll take any economic mind if they're smart, if they're sound, et cetera. But if you put people in there, I joked to a friend the other day when I saw what she looked like, the one that we fired. I said she should have been fired for the haircut.
Well, all I can tell you is I look at this, though, and I said, I don't really want my money spent on telling me what the jobs report looks like. I think there could be a private organization that could be third party. And, I mean, they do that in media ratings and everything else, right?
Of course,
we get a jobs report from a third-party independent group, and if
if
they screw the pooch on it, then all we got to do is say, "You guys are clowns. We'll get other people to do it." Right?
You think that the private institution can do better than the government? Yeah, me too.
Anyway,
every day of the week. Yeah,
I just find that fascinating. As you were in military intelligence, then what would be the most important takeaway from your life there?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing that I learned is how much we are hated by the rest of the world, and how quickly they would love to rush in and replace us, destroy us. I don't think people realize that. They go to sleep and they think that, that the rest of the world doesn't like us, maybe, that we're not super popular. But I don't think they realize they despise us in a lot of countries in the world.
And explain why, because I don't think people understand this. It's really the CIA blowback principle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things is just that we have a freedom in a level that they don't understand, don't have. We operate a lifestyle that, I mean, the Middle East, for instance, hates us. Islam hates us. And then even in countries like China and Russia, just the fact that we live lives that they could never dream of makes it harder to sell that lie to their people.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot to this. It's difficult to understand how we position ourselves in the world. One of the things that I think we really need to do is have a Ron Paul-esque humble foreign policy that says, look, we're not going to be involved in every nation under the planet. We don't think we're the world's leader. We've got a great life and the greatest economic engine the world's ever known. But we need to lead by example, and it starts with honest money. Hi, Lance. You back, buddy?
Yeah, I sure am, Sam. Sorry about that. I had a little technical difficulty. I don't know what was going on with the access. So good morning, you guys. Hey, good morning. How are you, William?
Morning. Pleasure. I'm doing very well. Happy to be here.
We're just talking about military intelligence and how we're hated around the world, Lance, because of the blowback.
Hear all that. It's interesting. When I was a government contractor, Sam, I never served in the military, but I worked for Blackwater USA and Sabre and G4S and a bunch of others, Halliburton and Wackenhut. There's no doubt that there is a tremendous amount of jealousy and hatred when it comes to the U.S. A lot of people here in the United States, they take their freedom for granted. People like William, and I want to thank him for his service. They don't really realize what they're dealing with. And as a contractor, I saw that firsthand. You see it on the ground. Maybe some of the worst of the worst. I did diplomatic security, facility security, and I was also doing CQB training for special operators around the world, hand-to-hand combat, night fighting. And, when you're on the ground, I was in 41 different countries, and when you're on the ground, you get to see it firsthand. And it may just be something as simple as the behavior of people when you're somewhere eating, and you can see them talking about you in not a positive manner. And I think it's gotten worse and worse. I think as these black ops, engagements, CIA, DIA, and other groups, they don't really realize our involvement and what that's caused as far as what people around the globe think about us, Sam.
Well, we're in over 130 nations militarily speaking, so I think that speaks for itself. When are we going to decide we're going to defend America? When are we going to quit violating the sovereignty of other nations? And most importantly, when are we going to be honest at the core of every transaction we engage in? We have dishonest money, fake fiat currency, which is absolutely going to fail. The question is not if, because every civilization that's embraced it has failed. The only question left is when. And that's what we want to talk about. Bill Armour is not only a military intelligence vet, but he's also with Genesis Gold Group. And he talks about honest money. Genesis Gold Group believes the Bible is kind of the core focus on this. Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a Christian as well. I wear a couple different hats here, but I would say that just when you look biblically speaking, it's the one thing we go back to that the Lord talks about as being a trustworthy place for your money. Fiat currency, I love how you put that here. It really is. It's a lie, right? It's debt out of thin air created over time it's all made up, right? And so that does fall apart eventually. There's no way not to. It's human greed. You print more, you print more, you print more. We find ourselves 37 trillion plus in debt. We find ourselves now paying interest on a greater share than we do for any other expenditure in the U.S. budget, more than the military itself. We just spend on just the interest on the debt alone. So when you talk about where we find ourselves in the fiat system, it will fail. You're right. It's not an if, it's a when. So positioning people into something that withstands that and actually profits from that is part of my life's work here.
Lance?
Yeah, it's a lot of people are unaware of the fact, Sam. You're right about the fiat currency, and it's interesting. I saw an article yesterday about Donald Trump talking about allowing a civil lawsuit to move forward against Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. And often we get a reaction. We tell people that's a private institution. It's privately held. Even the fact that we're paying for a renovation on a building for a privately held company, I just can't wrap my head around that. But we've been in this Federal Reserve thing for a very long time. One of the reasons we have told our listeners and subscribers to work with Genesis Gold Group and diversify. Because if you're counting on a currency that now we just hit the new debt ceiling, I think we just hit $37 trillion in debt. We're paying to have our money printed by a private agency. Nothing good can come from it, and there's no doubt that the Bible is pretty specific about fiat currencies. And William, one of the things I love about you guys is that one of the high bars of Genesis Gold Group, we hear it over and over again when people, go to the bigmiggold.com and they actually look for additional information. It's the low pressure vibe that Genesis Gold Group gets that gets a lot of people committed to actually working with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be one of the major things that sets us apart, is that we so much believe that what we're doing is right, that the evidence is on our side, that it makes positioning a case for that very, very easy. And frankly, we don't need to operate like used car salesmen for people to purchase metals, because if we present the actual numbers, the facts, the figures, and whatnot in a concise way, there people are going to make a good decision, because you can't argue with the facts. As much as people like to make up fake numbers and all this other stuff, we see that in economics all the time. When you really look at the real numbers and the real facts, the real figures, it really paints a very clear picture. We are on a very bad trajectory, and there is one way out, and that is being intangibles.
Yeah. And diversification, we always talk about that as a safety net. And, and just for the audience, this isn't an infomercial. This is about making sure you're prepared. We always talk about on our show that it's always good to have multiple options. When I was a contractor, we always believed in plans A, B, C, D, because everything, there's always a chance that things would go the wrong way. And if you thought they were going to go the wrong way, they usually did. And at the end of the day, that's what I believe, precious metals have to do. Now, you guys offer gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, correct?
That is absolutely correct. And we obviously do a consultation with people, discuss, historic trends and whatnot to go over what will fit them best. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We're certainly going to tailor that to each individual's needs and goals. But we do have a lot of offerings there, a lot of ways to buy gold. You've got things like IRAs, 401ks, so pre-tax dollars, post-tax dollars. You want to just store some at the house. Lots of different ways to approach this.
Hey, now, Sam, did you see this? I think this is a big deal, and I don't know, you guys were already in the IRA 401k zone. You'd already had that as an offering. We saw some historic executive action by Donald Trump. Sam, what did you think about that, where he's now going to allow this diversification to go into 401ks, which opens up, I think, $8.7 trillion and potential investment into other vehicles versus what was only available prior to this?
Yeah, number one, the numbers are staggering, first of all. I mean, when you talk about that kind of money, I have a hard time. I mean, I know people can say just add zeros, Sam. Positive number and add zeros. And I know people have these memes where they show warehouses full of cash stacked higher than your head as far as you can see. And I get all that. I don't really know that I understand that kind of money. And the reason that I don't is because dishonesty creates that kind of paper play, if you will. Honest money, you can see daylight in it. You can see something that's really an asset-based economy or an asset-based currency. It makes sense to me. When you go into this debt-based, it's like the Twilight Zone. It's insane. So number one, the money that you're talking about is just baffling to me, and I want to get Bill's comment on that in a second. But secondarily, I think anytime we can introduce competition, it's incredible. That's all I can say, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of there was a show, I'm not sure if it's still going, but Whose Line Is It Anyway? And they would open with where the points are fake and the rules are made up. And that basically feels like our entire fiat system is, complete. That you're right, that the numbers are not human. They're not, and you can try to show them in whatever way you'd like, but in reality, there's no human way to understand trillions and trillions of dollars, because they are not human numbers. They're numbers created by a Federal Reserve in order to line their pockets, essentially. So I would absolutely echo that sentiment.
So, Lance, I would say, first off, I don't even understand the numbers. I mean, the numbers baffle me in terms of real, or I should say fake money. The points don't matter and the rules are made up really highlights, in my opinion, kind of what's going on here. It's like, you know what? It's a rigged game from the start. You've got a banking cartel that runs the United States monopoly money supply, Lance. Think about that for a second. And my question for Donald Trump is, why are you battling with some clown chairman? Fire that idiot. But number two, why are we debating about, he had cost overruns with his building? Well, why should he care? He can print money. He doesn't care if there's cost overruns. Why are we even building the building anyway? Shut down the Fed, rout them out like Andrew Jackson did. Get rid of this banking cartel. It's a third-party criminal syndicate, and we pretend it's federal. It isn't federal in any way, shape, or form. No. If you don't believe me, folks, just go look in your phone book. Bill?
Well, the name itself, there's nothing federal or reserve about it. I'm even questioning whether or not the gold is in Fort Knox. We heard there was going to be a visible audit. Elon Musk talked about, televising it, and then all of a sudden, crickets. Nobody wants to talk about it any longer. I'm concerned that we don't have the reserves we have. They've never been revalued. They still value the reserves at $60 an ounce. I'm not sure why that is. And, the problem is, and what most people don't understand, Sam, is Donald Trump can't fire Jerome Powell. It would be as if he was walking in to fire the CEO of Apple. It's the same situation, and that's what most people can't wrap their head around.
He can't fire Jerome Powell from being the leader of this private organization, but he can simply sever the tie to government. He can say, you guys have committed fraud. We're going to basically retire the debt based on fraud. We're going to go back to United States notes. It's not as good as gold and silver, but it's a start where we divorce ourselves from fake, dishonest interest. Even JFK started to do that. That's probably why he's dead. But Andrew Jackson did the same thing. So, yeah, he can play his own games and run his own con, but yet that doesn't mean that he has United States backing or support or this idea that he's putting legal tender on this fake money is criminal, and he can just simply go to jail and run his organization for the clink. Maybe we'll put him in, what do they call that, alligator Alcatraz, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, and I would agree with that. I think that the first step to repairing our country, because it is beyond broken, would be to blow up the Federal Reserve, metaphorically speaking, obviously. Because so long as we are tied to the system, it's a cancer, and you can't get rid of cancer without cutting it out at the source to start. And right now, it has been bleeding us dry. Will continue to bleed us dry. It was created by very, very wealthy men on an island, many years ago, and they still profit. Their ancestors still profit from that today. So until we take our country back from an economic system that has captured us, we will never be really free. I actually think biblically a man cannot serve two masters. Well, right now we are enslaved. We serve this debt-based fiat system.
And that's why I come up with the phrase, the issue is honesty, ladies and gentlemen. If we can't be honest in every single transaction that we make, then I don't know how we're going to be honest in anything else. To dally around the fringes of this thing, in my mind, is a waste of time. The Bible gives clues on how the man-made currency really leads to instability, but honest money, they call it honest weights and measures in the Bible, right, Bill?
They absolutely do. God hates dishonest money. I mean, that is repeated multiple times throughout Scripture. And the fiat system is exactly that. It's a system designed to cheat and steal from you and do it in a way that you don't recognize. Because when they create more money out of thin air, you're right, they don't come and rob you. They don't come and take it right out of your pocket. What they do is that every dollar you have in there shrinks and its value shrinks. It is the invisible tax, and it is the most elusive fraud, theft that has occurred in American history.
Now, that's on the national and or the world scale, this dishonest money, ladies and gentlemen. And I wanted to set the stage so people clearly understand. I want to call a spade a spade. I don't want to play games with, this or that. Or I wanted to call it what it really is. But, Lance, we're going to take a break here in the second. But when we get back, though, I want to talk about questions and answers from Genesis Gold Group that can really relate to you in your life. You can't make Donald, fire the Fed, jettison the dishonest money. You can't make those kind of changes individually. But what you can do is take care of yourself. What you can do is create a hedge against this belligerent inflation. What you can do is put yourself in a position where you've got a broad enough, stable enough portfolio that can really bless your life, your family's life, and generations to come. When we get back, Lance Migliaccio is going to start there as we talk to our guest, Bill Armour, well-known military intelligence vet with Genesis Gold Group. To learn more, thebigmiggold.com. Hang tight, Liberty Roundtable Live.
proclaiming liberty across the land. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. From the Chattanooga suburb of East Ridge, Tennessee, word that 3 people, a father, mother, and a child, were killed this morning when a tree fell on their car amid flooding rains. The area is under a flood warning. What started with Florida's alligator Alcatraz is expanding.
In a 4-3 vote, Mason, Tennessee's 5 board member of aldermen, the mayor and vice mayor, approved agreements to turn a former prison into an ICE immigration detention facility operated by a private company. Core Civic says it would create nearly 240 jobs and generate about $325,000 in annual property tax revenue.
Correspondent Donna Warder. European leaders holding a series of virtual meetings today, including one with President Trump, ahead of Mr. Trump's Friday in-person meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin. The BBC's James Waterhouse is in Berlin.
Europe isn't exactly quite on the same hymn sheet. The NATO chief, Mark Rutte, for example, previously suggested that Ukraine has to recognize Russia's control over the Ukrainian territory it holds. He's taken a more optimistic tone over Friday's face-to-face meetings, describing it as a opportunity to see how serious Russia is about peace. But the rest of Europe, they're not using those kind of words. They are saying, look, you can't have discussions about the future of a country without that country being represented in any way.
Ukrainian President Zelensky is in Berlin participating in the virtual talks with Mr. Trump and the Europeans. Federal crackdown on crime, Washington, D.C., it's bearing fruit, according to the White House, which says there were dozens of arrests on day 1 of the operation. Stocks trading higher this morning on Wall Street, adding to yesterday's gains. The Dow is up 370 points. The NASDAQ ahead 73. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy. In 2011, I founded Wesley Financial Group with one goal in mind, to help honest folks out of their timeshares permanently. Today, I run Wesley with my 2 sons, a real family business, treating every client and every employee like we'd want our own family treated. That philosophy has helped us grow into the largest, most trusted timeshare cancellation company in the United States. Fortune magazine even recognized us as one of the best places to work. Why? Because we genuinely care. In fact, some of our former clients were so moved by their experience working with us, they joined our team so they could help others to timeshare freedom. If you're stuck in a timeshare, give us a call. Let our family help your family.
Call Wesley now for your free timeshare exit kit. 800-226-5454. That's 800-226-5454. 800-226-5454.
Get ready to be part of something incredible. We're breaking barriers and delivering the powerful stories that mainstream media won't touch. Your support is what fuels our mission to revolutionize journalism and bring you the truth. Join our passionate community of changemakers by donating at libertynewsradio.com today. Together, we're creating the future of news.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
As a parent, is receiving a faith-based, character-focused education for your children difficult to find? Do you believe that godly principles should be a central component in your child's education? Imagine a school where faith and integrity are at its center, where heritage and responsibility instill character. For over 40 years, American Heritage School has been educating both hearts and minds, bringing out academic excellence. This is the school where character and embracing the providence of a living God are fundamental, where students' national test scores average near the 90th percentile. With American Heritage School's Advanced Distance Education program, distance is no longer an issue. With an accredited LDS-oriented curriculum from kindergarten through 12th grade, your children can attend from anywhere in the world. American Heritage School will prepare your child for more than a job, It will prepare them for life. To learn more, visit American-Heritage.org. That's American-Heritage.org.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Welcome back to Liberty RoundTable Live with your host, Sam Bushman, and along for the ride today, myself, Lance Migliaccio from the Big Mig Show. And joining us for the first time, William Armour, retired military intelligence veteran, now with Genesis Gold Group. We are talking about economic uncertainty and why gold and silver, precious metals, are a necessary part of your financial portfolio. It's all about making sure you and your family have a plan B. I've got to tell you, with $37 trillion in debt, things aren't looking too good for that U.S. fiat currency. William, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate you being here. I've got lots of stuff. We're constantly asking our audience over on the Big Mig Show to kind of let us know, what do they want to know about? Where are the primary questions? A lot of people are wondering, that there's been this massive surge, obviously, in gold and silver. What do you think is driving these recent surges? It's always about, availability, access, and maybe the impact of the BRICS nations. But what's driving these prices? Because we're over 3,400 this morning, and people want to know why.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can put it really into four buckets here. The first is, and you alluded to this just a moment ago, is the Washington's recklessness as far as spending goes. The debt, it just continues to grow. It's out of control. The interest on the debt continues to snowball. So you've got that in one bucket here. The next bucket, I would say, is just the global shift to de-dollarization, which is somewhat of a product of that same piece. There is a lot of the world starting to look at, that's where BRICS comes in, to same idea, is how do we move away from the dollar, and obviously the dollar losing value there. Third one is just going to be your just general tariffs. I mean, obviously it's good stuff. I'm very pro-tariff. I think that we've been getting ripped off, and Trump has been doing a phenomenal job, renegotiating a lot of this. But frankly, that's all good for gold. Tension, uncertainty, all of that, very, very positive for gold. And then finally, it's supply and demand, right? You look at these central banks of every country in the world is buying gold at record numbers. Every single quarter here, we see a new report coming out from almost literally every single major central bank that they have purchased year over year, quarter over quarter, record amounts of gold. So supply and demand, de-dollarization, and the debt problem would probably be the big ones.
The only people not buying gold, Lance, is Fort Knox.
Yeah, I'm not sure they have any. Do they still do that at Fort Knox? Maybe they're using it for a Costco warehouse. I'm not sure. But it's concerning to me, right? We were supposed to see an audit. Of course, that went by the wayside, kind of like the Epstein files. We're not sure why that is, but we're all kind of shaking our heads and saying, let's get to the bottom of this. Elon Musk left on maybe we don't know the real reason why. We've heard lots of stories. Some people think it was strategic. Other people think there was some real, differences when it came to transparency. But let's talk about these prices, because gold's up, 37 or 40% year to date? Is that right? Do I have those numbers right, William?
You're exactly right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a dramatic rise here, and for all the same reasons that we just talked about there. And frankly, not a single one of the reasons that I mentioned there has any indication that will change in the near future. It's not like they're going to wake up tomorrow and balance the budget. It's not like we have a spending problem. We're like a kid with a credit card, so that's not changing overnight. At least not anytime soon. Other countries moving towards de-dollarization, that's not changing anytime soon. So the move that gold has made, people always ask me, is it too late to get into metals? Have I missed the boat on this? And the answer I give is that getting into gold is like waiting for a train. Yes, you may have missed the last train, but they come every 10 minutes. So either you're waiting for the next one, or you're getting on the next one, or you're just going to wait for the following one. So you just have to eventually pick a time to get in and start riding that.
And what you really need to remember is gold really hasn't changed. The fact is, back in the day, you could buy a nice tailored suit with an ounce of gold. You could buy 300 loaves of bread with an ounce of gold. That hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is that your dollar becomes less and less and less valuable as inflation takes its psychotic, satanic toll, Bill.
Absolutely. And that's why we keep going back to the biblical fundamentals that is gold as a currency, and that's why it was ordained. It's God-made, not man-made. Anything, all the way back through all of human history, from Genesis to Revelation, we see gold used as currency, and we see that any man-made devices falter and fail through time.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this might be a revelation to you, but Genesis Gold Group wants to help people understand this stuff. The traditional ratio between gold and silver used to be like 15, 16 to 1. Now it's over 90 to 1, right?
You're exactly right, which is why a tremendous amount of experts agree that even if gold were to suddenly sit on its hands and do nothing, that silver would have a truly meteoric rise just to get back to kind of in line with what you were saying, that anywhere from 15 to 30 ratio where it typically lives. We're talking about 200 to 300% returns in silver. Now, why isn't that the case now? Why has silver been so divorced from the price of gold as of late? And the answer to that, you can look through court filings. You can see JP Morgan with the manipulation on silver prices. There's a lot we can go into there, but at some point the dam breaks, right? Even big banks here, they don't do it for charity. They're not hoarding silver for their own good. At some point they want to see that price go up, and when they do, either you've got some or you don't.
And it's interesting. The industrial demand has gone through the roof on silver. There's a new EV technology from Samsung that requires 1 kilo of silver per EV battery, but that battery is much more efficient than the current technology. A bunch of the big manufacturers are talking about using it. And to me, I think silver, at one point, now I don't know if you guys are still recommending this. You had actually, Jonathan had mentioned that you guys are doing a 70-30 balance on silver to gold. Is that right? Still the same, or have things changed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that 100% as we continue this, because the outlook on silver is so bullish. And you're exactly right. The industrial demand for silver is through the roof. We're also not finding, one of the interesting things that's not talked about a lot, we're not finding the silver deposits that we had anticipated as we start to kind of scour the globe here. We have general ideas on how much silver and gold there are, and we have general ideas on where they are. Some of that geomapping is very, very advanced, but we're getting to these places and we're finding, wait a minute, it's really not as much as we thought we had here, or as much that we have access to. Some of it's so deep in the ground, we're just never going to get it. So it's becoming an increasingly interesting situation where supply and demand are becoming further and further apart from one another.
I got an interesting reality check on that for you, Bill, to consider, and Lance. When people keep the commandments of God, gold and silver is easy to find. When people turn their backs on God, they become immoral and violate the commandments of God, and they chase this worldly viewpoint, fueled by, money. Then what happens is gold and silver becomes harder to find. God's in charge of that, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, there's no doubt. I saw some disturbing stuff about what's happening to the churches around the globe, and how less and less people are going to church, less and less people are supporting the church. It's kind of frightening. And at the end of the day, that's why we always talk about having a safety net. Some people like to use the word prepper. I always think that that's kind of like conspiracy theorists. They want to say that people that have a prepared plan are somehow sitting on the far, far, far right of the globe. And I don't think that's to be true. I think at the end of the day, always making sure you have a plan. And that's one of the things, Bill, that I like about the Genesis Gold site is you guys have that educational section where they can download all sorts of stuff for free, even before they have to engage with salespeople. And I think that's so unusual that you guys have created this really high-level education portal.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to the Big Mig Gold, you go to Genesis Gold Group, you call in, you're not going to get the typical, call room where, someone's trying to push something down your throat. We really are here to understand who you are, what's helpful for you, what can we provide on an informational sense. Because look, just from the bottom of my heart, I don't know your life. I don't know who you are, where you come from. I just know the general principles that guide sound money, and we want to offer those to people so that they can make good decisions. I said a little bit earlier, and I'll just reiterate that if the facts and figures are presented honestly to someone right now, and they look at this from a rational sense of view, I find it really, really hard that anyone can think it doesn't make sense to diversify to protect themselves. So we're not in the business here. It's kind of like the dollar fiat as a whole is on trial. I'm just making a case on why that should be.
And let's talk about the benefits. There's a lot of discussion, about ETFs. They're hot to trot right now in the crypto world and otherwise, but talk about the benefits. What I like about is the physical ownership of gold and silver. I'm a stacker. I've got plenty of gold and silver on hand just in case. Let's talk about investing in physical gold.
And when we're talking to the world, Lance, I don't have any, just so everybody knows.
Yeah. In my opinion, I've always been a guy, Sam, maybe because of my contracting, experience. I like to have a plan A, B, C, D, just in case. I'm always thinking to myself that things
Go ahead and skip the break. Continue, Lance.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think that a smart person always, has a little bit extra stashed in their larder that maybe the rest of the world doesn't know about, and they've got a plan just in case things don't go the way as described. We know the narratives are controlled. We've heard they're still using Operation Mockingbird, but a much more sophisticated version. Tulsi Gabbard's out of that, and several others have. I just think you have to think about things. You have to think about the future and how do you protect your family just in case. So to me, I'm always thinking keep the powder dry. But let's talk about the benefits of physical gold and silver, maybe palladium and platinum versus ETFs and futures, because a lot of companies are pushing ETFs and futures and golds, saying the rate of return is that much higher, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of their model.
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring that up, because you're right. A lot of these companies that you see on TV, they're going to come out and they're going to say, it's gold, it's physical gold, and then you're going to find out later you've got an ETF, you've got a paper certificate, and people may say, well, it still tracks along the price of gold, right? Doesn't it? And the answer is not exactly. There is actually a pretty staunch difference. You can look at the trajectory of spot price gold and then some of these ETFs like GLD and whatnot, and you are going to see some pretty significant drop-offs where metal actually wins, the tangible metal itself. But beyond all that, beyond just making more money and whatnot, the more important piece here to me is that with tangible metals you don't have that counterparty risk. It is your property, whereas when you're talking about an ETF, that is effectively someone else's fund that you're invested in, and you hope that they're doing the right thing. You talk about being able to prepare and plan for all eventualities. Really hard to prepare and plan when someone else is the one. You don't know what they're doing, how they're doing it. When it's your metal sitting there in your vault or in your home, you're the only one that has any control over that. You're the one that has, you can really diagnose and affect the outcome.
And you mentioned this disparity, or I brought it up, I think, and you highlighted this disparity between gold and silver. It's like 90+ to 1 right now, which is typically way out of whack. It's normally like 15, 20 to 1. It used to be a $20 gold piece, and it used to be a $1 silver piece. So it was 20 to 1 when that was kind of documented. Then gold was at $35. Now it's pegged at $35. Now silver's more than gold was back in the day, just showing you how we've been robbed over time. But the reason I bring this up is taking possession of the metal is really important, because when you are on paper, even if a tenth of the people demanded payouts, that have to renege, Bill.
You're exactly right. And that's the scary thing, is because I always say that gold ETFs almost operate like fool's gold, in that they look really pretty, but the time that you would actually need it to do anything, it would be worthless to you. So it's not good in a crisis. It's kind of like it reminds me a lot of the entire financial system, in that it's going to be real nice and pretty when things are good, but the second things get bad, it's not going to do you a lick of good.
Let's talk about interest rates. How's that going to affect things if Trump gets his way and pushes rates down? See, I don't think that any Federal Reserve, thug cartel, or the President of the United States, or me or you or anybody should control interest rates. I think supply and demand should, but that's a sidetrack. The point is, what's going to happen, you think, to gold and silver when interest rates, change?
Well, luckily, we've got quite a bit of documented history on that. Almost all of gold's major movements, large bull runs there, have come with easing. So as rates come down, the reason for that is pretty simple. If money is really expensive, you get a great return, on a CD, treasury, what have you, then you're less likely maybe to put that in metals because it's not an interest, quote unquote, producing item. So as interest rates come down, those become less attractive and metals goes higher. In fact, the bull run that gold is on right now is unprecedented because it's doing that in spite of tremendously high interest rates. It's kind of like housing right now. As the rates have been high, people generally are not as interested in buying, and so housing prices have stagnated a little bit. But the second those rates come down, there's a frenzy of buyers that want to go out there and buy a home. It's the exact same thing. So similar with gold there. So it will be, if you do believe that Trump wins this, and I think he does, and strong arms, we do end up seeing interest rates come down, that's going to be a tremendous benefit for gold.
Lance?
Yeah, I agree with everything that he just said. I look. There's one thing about this administration. The things that they have gotten involved with, they seem to be, putting a tremendous amount of clarity on. It's kind of like what they did with the SEC recently when it came to the cryptocurrency rules. They came out with the Clarity Act and the Genius Act and several other pieces. So what I like about this administration, when it does decide that it's going to spearhead a particular initiative, they do bring out some serious clarification. I got to ask a couple questions, Bill. So Trump, I guess there's some recent clarification on tariffs on imported gold bars. And my understanding is they're not going to be putting tariffs on gold. Is that correct, or am I wrong about that?
Yes, you're exactly right. So they pulled it back. Obviously another negotiation tool there, pushed at least 90 days. We'll see if that does come, but they'll renegotiate that then. But for now, that's been paused. All that's doing, this yo-yoing back and forth, continues to add to don't wait. I mean, if you can wait and then metals get tariffed, they go higher. So I mean, frankly, you can buy. There's an old saying, you don't wait to buy gold, you buy gold and wait, because oftentimes here, if you're doing the latter, you're waiting to buy gold, you're just missing out. And frankly, with everything we've got, the turbulence, and a lot of it is really, really good. I want to reiterate that, but and it's good for gold too. But you just want to make sure that you're early, not late, because you're always one of the two.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when we started with you guys, when Jonathan and us, when they decided to sponsor our show, I think gold was like $2,200 an ounce. And we told people that it was undervalued. A lot of people didn't think it was undervalued. And of course, now we're at 3,400 and change. What do you think? When of course, there's the clarity on the tariffs. What do you think the impact's going to be? Because I believe demand's going to surge now that he's made. You guys had this exclusive product. You were doing 401ks and IRAs prior to this, but now Trump has come out and said, "Hey, everybody, we're going to open up the 401k door." That's $8.7 trillion, my understanding, is sitting in 401ks. What do you think the impact that's going to be on the prices here?
Yeah, I mean, all of us have been to an economics 101 class. We understand, supply and demand. And I think, the takeaway there is you add that much, even if, I tend to think that there's a lot of people that are smart, that do want to add metals to their portfolio, but are, locked in something like a 401k. And make no mistake, the 401k system as a whole has been absolutely co-opted by these major financial firms that want to keep money in-house. They don't want money going to assets they're not going to benefit off of. And that's the reason you haven't had access to metals in a 401k for so long, is because it's not doing diddly for them. So they've lobbied and whatnot for many, many years to keep this. So Trump doing this was widely unpopular with a lot of these really top-level financial guys, because they understood that they are going to see an exodus away from the products they offer and into metals, which great for metals, not so great for the market for what people have in equities and whatnot.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Let me ask you this. Can you give for the audience, because everybody's always nervous. They call a line. They're worried about the sales. They're worried about what's going to happen. Can you kind of give us an A to Z kind of process when somebody actually decides to get a hold of Genesis Gold Group? Tell me how that sales call is managed, or how those people come into the environment, the education that occurs, and kind of the dynamic from when they decide they're going to purchase, and how do they end up with the gold in their hand?
Yeah, absolutely. So you say, you know what, I think I at least want to learn more. Maybe I've already decided to do something, and you go, you submit, for more information, or you call in, 1-800-200-GOLD, and you call in and you say, I just want to talk to someone about this. First thing we're going to do is try to get to know you a little bit. What are your goals? What are you looking to do? What would you like to know? That's a question I always start with is, what matters to you? What do you want to know? What questions do you have? My approach and our approach will always be tailored that way. So you're going to call and you're going to speak to someone like that. They're going to either direct you with information, get you out whatever you need, or they're going to, have you talk to someone like me that can really help assess your situation. So, but you're going to call in, you're going to get the help you need. You say, you know what, I think I really do want to move forward with this. There's going to be two ways you can go about it. The first way you would approach it is just a post-tax purchase of metals. That's going to be something from your checking account, savings account, etc. And we can help with that entire process. We're going to actually send you the physical metals, incredibly discreet, low profile, insured. You're going to get those metals. You're going to have that on hand. The other way is with things like 401ks and IRAs. So it's relevant that we're talking about that. And we're going to help you and assist you with a qualified rollover. That means no tax implications, no penalties, nothing of that sort, so that those funds can move into physical gold and silver. And you can preserve a portion or as much or as little as you'd like in metals. And again, hopefully I've presented this, but my job here and my biblical understanding is not to get people, to do anything except what they already feel is on their heart and what the Lord is already doing in them.
All right. The news validates Lance's claims, ladies and gentlemen. As of March 31, 2025, the most recent data available, Americans held approximately $8.7 trillion in 401k accounts. Now that brings up this headline that I went to when I went to the bigmiggold.com. Secure your retirement savings with proven financial strategies rooted in faith, Lance. I love that because I think that's really when people put their faith in everything they do in God, including your finances. Hey, man, he can make more of it than we can, Lance.
No doubt. Yeah, at the end of the day, I think you always have to look at faith-driven stewardship when you're looking at your finances. And, of course, that's who you should always turn to when you're looking for some, when you're trying to understand the complexities of what's going on nowadays, which isn't easy. I mean, we get lots of listeners and subscribers who say, man, I'm just struggling to really understand that it's such a tsunami of information. And that's why a company like Genesis Gold, we had a lot of companies come at us. A lot of them wanted to come and sponsor the show. We get, because our show is rapidly growing. We've got the Global Finance Forum. We've got the Crypto Power Hour. And we picked Genesis because Jonathan came across to me, and he's the CEO of Genesis Gold. He came across to me as a really credible and genuine person. And I love the fact that he talked about low pressure sales because nobody likes to pick up the phone the first time. Everybody's intimidated by it. But, for example, they have a product they came out with called the Prepper Bar. I'm holding one in my hand right now. This one happens to be silver. And it really changes the dynamic. You always saw how they would trim off pieces of silver in the old Roman coins. So many coins became short because they cut off small pieces to make smaller payments. And maybe whether you can explain to the audience how you can just snap off a piece. Now, I understand that you can actually hold these prepper bars in your IRA and 401k also. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
That is absolutely correct. And just for anyone listening that doesn't know what we're talking about, those prepper bars, they come in a sheet there. They're perforated. They almost look like a Hershey's chocolate bar, and they are able to break into smaller denominations there, which make them very barterable. If that were ever to become an issue. And obviously, I tend to think that we're heading that direction. So having something, and you have a big chunk of gold, you're shaving it off. It's going to be very difficult. But having something that can serve in that way and able to break off a smaller piece to get the bread or whatever you need, supplies, I think that's a valuable product and certainly something exactly as you mentioned that you can own in a retirement account. In case you ever need to bring that home, you can do that. These distributions allow you to bring your metals home one day should you feel the need there. So great question.
Yeah, and I think this product, just also I want to tell the audience, your listeners and subscribers, Sam, if you head over to the bigmigbar.com, Genesis Gold Group put up a special. If you use all caps Prepper, PREPPER, you'll get 10% off on the silver and 5% off on the gold, which is a big number nowadays, especially on that gold. And they've got them both in stock, and they come with an assay report. In the time we got left, let's just touch on counterfeit gold and silver. I've been warning people on our show regularly that you have to be careful. You just can't run over to eBay or somewhere else and buy gold and silver because there's lots of counterfeit gold and silver coming out of China and India, I'm told.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's everywhere. Even big dealers here that don't source properly are having trouble with it. So you really have to know who you're working with to make sure you're getting the real stuff.
Sam.
Ladies and gentlemen, gold and silver is honest money. The issue, ladies and gentlemen, is honesty. Okay? Understand that. And understand that you don't have to be a financial expert. All you got to do is get a little bit and do so over time. And pretty soon you'll look back and you'll go, I have quite a bit. It will bless your life, stabilize your portfolio, and more. Get a hold of our buddies over at thebigmiggold.com.